Would you like to learn how to pay off your mortgage in just a few short years? In this episode, we get to learn from Sam Kwak, a two-time author, real estate investor, and mentor. Let's jump in so you can learn the secrets that he has to share.
Are you a working professional but struggling to balance the workload of your career, family, obligations, and preparing for your financial future? If so, this podcast is for you. You've spent years learning your craft, and now it's time to focus on your financial future. This podcast will teach you what you need to retire wealthy and happy. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Retire Wealthy and Happy podcast. We created this podcast to provide financial tips and tricks to help you build up your passive income and also provide methods that you can use to protect your wealth so that you can plan a better future for yourself and your family. We're grateful to have this podcast sponsored by Monument Real Estate Capital. Monument Real Estate Capital, helping you retire at least 10 years early through real estate investments.
On today's episode, we're excited to have Sam Kwak with us. Sam is a real estate investor. He's an entrepreneur. He does some coaching. He's also written a book or two. He currently lives in Illinois with his wife and daughter, and he's also working on getting his pilot's license. What a fun thing to do. So we're going to talk today. We're going to talk a little bit with Sam about how you can get started in real estate investing, how you can break free from your mortgage. He has some unique tips to learn to pay off your mortgage and to use infinite banking to grow your wealth. I'm excited to hear about this one. I honestly don't know very much about infinite banking. So with that, Sam, thanks for being on the show today. We really appreciate you scheduling some time to be here. And we're going to start by just letting you share a little bit about your background. Tell us how you got started working in real estate and working with your brother to, what is it, the Kwak Brothers Real Estate? Is that what the company that you're running? Very good.
Yeah. And Carl and Ben, appreciate you having me on and love to share a story. And what I would like to do, hopefully, is anyone listening to this will walk away with some value and some aha moments and at least one actionable items, right? For them to go and improve whatever aspect of their financial future. So yeah, so just like what Earl and Ben, just how they kicked off the intro, and that was a good intro, by the way, factually accurate. I'm glad you didn't pick one of the other Sam Kwaks out there and read his bio. There's
it would probably get traded or something, right?
Right. There's a tennis player that's also named Sam Kwak and an attorney actually here in Chicago that's also named Sam Kwak. So I get confused as one of the Sam Kwak clone armies out there. So it's but anyhow, yeah. So my humble story begins back in, so as you can see, I wasn't born here. I'm actually an immigrant from a small little country known as South Korea, right? Woo, go Squid Games. And funny enough, I've never seen that show. I've seen references, but come as an immigrant back in 1999. And so I was only 7 years old, young kid, came to country not knowing the culture, the way of life, the language. The only people I knew, obviously, were my two parents and my brother. So when I got here, everything was a shock. And, fast forward, not having the cultural context as well as living in this country, being born here and not having parents that maybe had the kind of the background knowledge on everything, on how finances work. Obviously I had some disadvantages, right? In terms of, one example is I didn't even know the word entrepreneurship until I was 19. Like someone told me, is like, "Oh, you're such an entrepreneur." I'm like, "What is that?" Right? Like, what does that mean? And when I saw the word, I'm like, "How do you pronounce that?" Like entrepreneur, what? And I didn't know until like 19, right? And it wasn't also until when I was, I think, 20, 21 years old, I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? I mean, every single real estate guy it's like the book of Genesis for all real estate investing. If you haven't read it, right, you're missing out. But I read that book, and that ultimately kind of sparked a series, a binge really on self-help books, right? I didn't really enjoy reading up to that point because high school and middle school, they make you read, Huckleberry and Finn and stuff that as teenage boys, like you're like, whatever, right? But it wasn't until I was 20 when I thoroughly actually picked up reading as I love this. I'm actually learning how to make money instead of reading some fictional, James and the Giant Peach or whatever. So started reading, and that's when I started getting intrigued with this idea of investing in real estate. And that's kind of where the journey began. So that was 2013, 2014 is when we officially said, hey, let's start. Let's go and actually make a leap of faith. But really before that, Daniel and I are just normal college kids. We're attending this small Christian college out here in Midwest, and just, making our way through life, hoping that we could graduate, get good grades, get a good job, and, work for 40 years. And maybe, retirement wasn't even on the radar, right? You're just at that age, 22, 21 years old. Your goal was, let's make it through life as fun and excitement as possible. Get all the chicks, right? get invited to parties. That's all you're thinking about. And that's honestly who I was, right? Until the Rich Dad Poor Dad book and subsequently just the sleeping giant of a passion woke up. But honestly, at the same time, I was conflicted because, you have your school professors, your peers, your parents going, oh, no, you got to finish school. You got to get a good job. You got to stay on track, do the normal thing. And obviously over here, it was the pathway to real estate investing, entrepreneurship, doing it something different. So I took a lot of leap of faith. I was conflicted because I knew we would get criticized. People would make fun of us. We would be coming out of the social norm, right? Of what the 98% of the people are doing. So obviously took the leap of faith, and started getting into real estate investing in 2014 in our dorm room, right? And that's kind of where the story begins. So yeah, I'll take a little pause right there because I can keep on rambling like a street preacher. So
Earl, do you have any follow-ups? You want me to go on to the next question?
Yeah, interesting, Sam. I coached for Robert Kiyosaki back in 2003, 4, something like that, right after the success of his Rich Dad Poor Dad. At the time, he was pumping out maybe 2 or 3 books a year, and he never really wrote them. He always had, they were kind of ghostwritten for him, but he contributed a lot to them, but he always had somebody else that helped him to write them. I don't know about Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah, he's a smart man for doing that. That's good. Yeah.
Interesting. In my coaching, I learned, I don't think there's a single person that could pick up Rich Dad Poor Dad today and figure out how to invest in a piece of property, because it is not real estate oriented training. But I don't interview very rarely do we interview anybody who doesn't credit their desire to go on and improve their life to picking up the copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad at some point. Right. It's incredible. It's incredible motivation, but I think you got to get your actual real estate skills from reading something else besides Kiyosaki's books. How's that?
Yeah. I like to say it's the entry for a lot of people, right? It's what sold you the idea of real estate investing and its possibilities. And then from there, obviously I had many mentors and coaches and books. I guess to kind of pick back up from that story, 2014, the first thing immediately we did was we started, reading the books, right? We started reading all the books that we found online, joined online forums, YouTube videos, free seminars disguised as, obviously sales pitches, right? You go and it's like, you're here to learn how to invest in real estate. And all you saw was just testimonials over testimonials. And then obviously at the end, they'll go, all right, go to the back of the room.
That was me at the back of the room back then, by the way.
Yeah, right. It's like, hey, Earl. No, and nothing wrong with that, right? Like I'm in that industry as well, and totally get it. So, but obviously done that and did all the surface level learning, and obviously, I remember one day we were so like pumped up, we were so brave. I don't know, like we were on some kind of, I'm sure we were on some kind of drugs. I don't know, not really, but like we were so brave that like we scoured through Zillow and found a property for sale. It's for sale by owner. Actually, it wasn't. This is a different property, but we found a property that was listed, and we made an appointment. I was 21 at the time. Made an appointment with the listing agent. Showed up to the house and walk around. And the real estate agent, the whole entire time, she was like in her 40s, 50s, I think, and she was looking at me all skeptical. I'm 21, right? I look like I just came out of the womb or whatever. And I'm walking around looking at the property, and she asked him questions like, okay, so what are you looking for? Right? You know, do you have a family? Are you married? And I'm like, no. And I told her I'm a real estate investor. In fact, I can't believe it's so funny I said this. Young kid, don't know anything. I'm like, no, in fact, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to put this on contract and I'm going to sign it. I'm going to wholesale it for a fee. And the moment I said that, it came out that out of my mouth. She's like, all right, you need to get out. You need to get out. You're wasting my time. What are you doing here? And I remember like, she literally kicked me out, right? I walked away feeling really embarrassed. I'm like, what the heck did I just do? Like, I didn't cuss her out. Did I? Like, what happened? And obviously little do I know, right? That's not what you do. Or most of the times real estate agents don't really understand what happens, but that was one of the things that we had to do. And we've been like literally grinding it out, trying to figure out how to make this work. In fact, at one point I was so like, we were at a point where we couldn't pay our rent. So I was driving for Uber for like a short period of time just to get like rent paid and stuff. So the pivotal moment was, I remember going to one particular meetup or this gathering of real estate investors in the area. And they had a bunch of people in the room that actually were doing really well. I mean, a couple hundred units, couple hundred doors, guys making millions of dollars a year, flipping houses. I mean, they're building an empire literally in our backyard. And I took a couple of the guys out to lunch and asked them, hey, how are you doing what you're doing? Can I learn from you? Can I mentor? Can I get mentoring from you? And obviously a few of them had coaching programs, mentoring programs. So we liked one of them and we did end up paying the mentoring fee, got started. And we literally showed up to the mentor's office, I think at least once or twice a week, just shadowing, learning, listening to the conversations, when it comes to raising money or negotiating for the deal, watching how the paperwork is done. So literally seeing all those steps, and seeing what works, what doesn't. I think that's what really kind of helped, because knowledge is free, right? You can get knowledge just about anywhere. Read a book. A lot of these experts and mentors, they literally give you their tactics and strategies for free. The part that most people don't know how to do is how to associate those strategies and tactics to what they already know. Because if you study the art and the science of learning, you don't learn new things by just being exposed to it. You have to be able to take something that you already know and start building, nerve association to them to pick things up like this, right? So it's kind of like, I use that word a lot. It's kind of like because I'm associating something new to something that like you already know, and I'm trying to bridge those two gaps so that you go, oh, okay, got it, right? So I use that a lot, and the mentor role helped me do that really well, right? One of the things that I've learned in negotiation, the mentor did a good job. It's like, it's kind of like going on a date with a girl. I'm like, oh, okay, got it. So you don't ask the girl to get married on the first date, right? So, and she's like, and he's like, it's the same thing with negotiation. Is you kind of have to like work it, and it's a dance. You have to figure it out. I'm like, okay, got it. And then that helped me learn how to negotiate. So started in 2014, and it wasn't until 2017, like 3 years of learning, grinding it out, right, doing all these things. It wasn't till 2017 April is when we closed our first real estate deal, and that was our 4 single family portfolio. Bought it on refinancing, 10% down, raised the money from, and that was the other thing, was raising money. I learned that through the mentor, and the best analogy that he used, it's like Shark Tank. You go to these rich people, ask them for money in exchange for a percentage of your deal. I'm like, oh, okay, got it. So all these things, right? I learned, picked it up. So that was our first deal. And that's kind of the story from there. 2 months from there, 2 months after, we do our first flip. And by the end of that year, 2017, we picked up 75 rental doors, just doing rinse and repeat, right? Going to the seller, structuring owner financing, raising capital, boom. And then we got braver each time. And the biggest deal with that year was a 36-unit apartment building. And that changed my perspective forever. So that year, it's, I use the analogy, it's kind of like growing a bamboo tree, right? If you know how a bamboo tree is grown, the first 3 years of a bamboo tree's life, it grows like 2 inches, right? It doesn't really grow much, but you're still watering it, taking care of it, fertilizing it, doing all the things. But it's on the third year where it shoots up, right? Grows, dozens of feet. It's incredible. So I feel like most businesses are grown that way, right? The first 2-3 years, you're really not seeing much traction until the third year, like boom, something happens and then just takes off from there. So that's pretty much the success on the real estate investing side. That's the journey. 2017. Man, it was 5 years ago. I can't believe that time goes by so quick. So that's the origin story.
Sam, are you saying that it took, and I'm not judging here, are you saying it took 3 years from the time you started till you got your first deal?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking this specifically is because I want our listeners to recognize that anybody can do real estate investing, but it's not like you can just jump in tomorrow and make millions of dollars. There's a lot of learning and you're either going to learn it one way, or you're going to learn it the painful, expensive way by making some bad choices. So one way or the other, you're going to learn it. It just takes a while. So thank you for being that honest with us. And I want to kind of segue into, you're the author of a couple books, which we're going to talk about today. The first one, I believe, is called 0 to 75 Units in 1 Year, right? That's one of your books. And I'm assuming that's based on the story you were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
You want to talk more about that book and tell us anything about that one?
Yeah, honestly, so that book, literally, we share, we don't hold bar. Like we share all the tactics and strategies that we've used and that process of 0 to 75 unit. We take each of the deals that we've done and turn it into a case study and break it apart. Hey, this is what we did. This is why we did this. And here's what went wrong. And there are embarrassing parts of that story where I got into a bad deal and I had to sell it. And it gets messy and dirty. It's not unicorns and roses all the way through. And I'm sure you guys have some stories like that. I mean, those are just battle scars that you earn, tuition you pay, right? That's what I like to say as part of being successful. But yeah, that's all the tactics and strategies. Again, like we give this away, just knowing that some of you guys will get it, some of you won't, but that's okay. It's just all part of the process of learning. And then we're actually working on another book, literally called Your First Deal Playbook. So we recognize that, okay, there's a ton of knowledge, ton of information out there in the world of internet. We're no short supply of that. But the one thing that we recognize is that it's the wisdom to apply these knowledge. I feel like that's lacking. And a lot of that just comes from mentorship and having relationships with people who are already doing it. So we're working on that book next.
So before we go on, let's with your first year of buying property stores, you were talking about buying a portfolio, you talked about flipping, you talked about buying an apartment complex, and that was 5 years ago. Are you willing to share with us what you're currently focusing on with your real estate portfolio? Yep.
So we're now kind of shifted and pivoted. So along the way, back in 2020, literally in the middle of COVID, and I am not shy about admitting my defeats and failures, just because, again, it's all tuitions, man. You just pay along the way, right? So 2020, we launched a private equity company. We shelled out a lot of money for this, and we're like, let's go tackle big stuff, right? Let's take over the world, right? And we launched a private equity company, and we started with a group of people that we knew and built relationships around with. Had some phenomenal people in this group, and started private equity, started raising money. And without getting into the weeds of it, I think the biggest pitfall that we faced was we didn't have traction. We didn't have, I think we were too heavy to lift off. If I'm giving you like an airplane analogy, here we were in this like Cessna, smaller airplane, and we were trying to fit like 6 people in there and trying to take off at the same time. And like, it was not happening. And the reason why I think, the bottom line is we ended up shutting it down about a year ago. The reason why we didn't take off is I don't think we had a very clear process of what we wanted to do. It's kind of like trying to explain what you do to a 90-year-old grandma. That's my litmus test, is if you have a successful business, if you can explain what you do to your 90-year-old grandma, right? So if I go to my 90-year-old grandma and go, hey, grandma, this is what I do. I raise money from institutional partners and do this, blah, 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 right? We have a satellite core fund. And obviously your 90-year-old grandma's like, oh, that's really nice, honey. That's really nice. Right. But if you can explain it to a 90-year-old grandma and make it so easy to understand, you might have a winning formula, right? A confused mind that can't make decisions. So I think we had a very confusing formula, even to our investors that we were trying to raise money from. And at the same time, we didn't have a clear identity as far as what are we doing? Like what's our asset class? Like, what are we trying to do? What's our niche core competency? What's our unique ability, as Dan Sullivan will call it? And I think we lacked that vision. And then we were just burning money at the time, we were just burning money at that point. And so all of us partners were like, yeah, this isn't working out. So let's shut it down. And again, I wouldn't say it was a waste of time, waste of money. Great people. It's just we didn't have a match in traction in terms of our vision and where we want to go. So just this year, in fact, right around Christmas, we are relaunching our syndication. So we're going smaller, going back down a level. So we're looking at 50 plus unit apartment buildings right now. Also self-storage units, raising money, and that's ultimately what we're good at. So we're going back to simplicity. So the lesson there is and I wouldn't say failure, but it's a lesson in tuition there is keep things simple, right? Don't get crazy and overcomplicated. Complicated is good. I think when you're at, maybe a couple hundred billions in asset under management, but I think just getting off the ground, we were aiming for something that doesn't exist yet. And I think that's why we folded last year. So again, just stuff that you learn. Don't let the previous successes make you rest in your laurels and start overshooting, right? Your core competency. So that's what we're working on right now is 50 plus unit apartment complexes. We have a team that's smaller, thank God, that is doing acquisitions and raising capital and all that. So yeah, that's where we're at today.
Sam, I really appreciate your transparency with your past experiences. And I think one of the things I want to pull out for our listeners is that whether you're talking about real estate or business, if you're serious about starting something, being focused and having a specific plan about what you're doing is extremely important in your ability to be successful. Because I have a lot of people come to me and say, hey, I want to be a real estate investor. And I say, great. Well, what of the 1,000 options do you want to do in real estate? And they're like, I have no idea. I just want to be a real estate investor. And when you can really start drilling down into what their skills are, what they're interested in, there's a lot of ways you can make money in real estate and in business in general. And when you focus on what you're good at and what you want to be doing as far as either real estate investing or business goes, you have a much greater chance of being successful. So Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. Totally. And I think that's one thing I get bugged about in our industry. And again, this is no criticism to any specific individual or person or group, but I mean, if you flunk big, right? Let people know that you flunked and you learn from it. It's scary because again, part of what we do, and you can relate to Ben and Earl is, when we raise capital, you're literally being entrusted with other people's money. And, when you have to admit defeat or, a tactical retreat, I like to call, it's hard because, you got all this inner voice going, oh, what if they hate me? What if they sue me? What if they do this? Right. I think, at that point, how you show up in taking responsibility and ownership, at that point matters more, right? Than, trying to cover things up or making it look better or good, artificially. So again, if you're going to flunk big, take ownership, like what, Jocko Willink says, extreme ownership, right? It's like, hey, I flunked big. This is my fault. I should have taken ownership on this area. And so, I'm not afraid to do it because those who claim ownership of their failures can claim ownership of the victory even more. So that's the philosophy I live by.
Well, especially in today's world, right? Like it's almost impossible to hide anything. So if you've got experience in your past that didn't go well and you don't tell people about it, it's probably going to come out at some point and then you'll just look like an idiot. Let's use a quick pilot analogy here, right? Like,
sure.
If I was going to get in a plane, I would much rather get in a plane with a pilot who's like, I've been flying for 10 years and I had this really terrible experience where I almost crashed, but I didn't because I knew how to save it, as opposed to somebody who's like, well, I've been flying for 3 days. And if you want to come with me, we might make it there. Much different. So we appreciate your experience there.
Yeah, for sure.
So Sam, you do a little bit of mentoring yourself. I think the company's called First Deal Mentor. Is that right? Yep. Tell us a little bit about how you help people do their first real estate deal. Just talk a little bit about your mentoring company and how and what the focus of that is.
Yeah. So, so our mentoring company, coaching company came about as a response, as a challenge to the industry where I think there's a lot of great experts out there, a lot of good gurus. They have phenomenal and vast amount of knowledge that they're sharing. But at the same time, that comes with the cost of overwhelm for a lot of beginners. And at the same time, there's a lot of good general knowledge out there. Like, hey, here's what wholesaling is. This is what owner financing is. This is the BRRRR strategy, subject to, like all these different things that are great. you're learning about tools, but I think what is lacking is actual sequential step-by-step on, hey, here's what you need to do to get to your first ever real estate deal. I truly believe when you get to your first real estate deal, one or two things happen. Number one is there's obviously a major confidence boost and a perspective shift in what's possible. The second thing is who you are changes, right? It's you learn to become more patient. You learn to become more persistent. You learn to become stronger in the face of adversity, and just challenges overall. So just kind of break it down. Like the first year mentor program, we don't promise that you're going to make billions of dollars out of the gate. We don't promise that you're going to have a portfolio built by the end of the program. It's really simple. It's like, hey, let's get you just your finish line of a real estate deal, right? And preferably profitably. So we do that with a very, very simple framework. We call it the 4 strategy, which is an acronym for find a deal, right? Creatively, preferably off market, owner finance it. And we have a very systematic approach of getting to a yes with the seller, raise the capital from, and we teach a variety of ways of doing that through, self-directed retirement plans and private partners and all that. And then you cash flow it, meaning you hire a property management company or have a partner that manages the properties, and then expand the empire and, start learning how to build teams and grow that way. So we teach it in that very simple framework. And really the goal is, hey, let's get you to a finish line. Let's get you to do a deal. And we want to celebrate you for doing that. So we just get really like focused, put the blinders on, don't worry about doing anything else. Just do this and let's get you to a deal. And then we can start experimenting afterwards. So that's what the program's all about. Again, I don't want to make this sound like a sales pitch, but that's the problem that we're trying to solve with our program is there's a lot of people with a lot of head knowledge, but they lack the application. So we're going to solve that problem of giving them the wisdom, the application, the voice of certainty, so that they can ultimately get to the finish line of closing their first real estate deal. That's the goal there.
Very cool. So you talked earlier about when you got started, you attended a number of the guru that comes in. They spend 2 weeks advertising on the radio. You meet with somebody for 2 hours, right? That goes to hey, we're going to sell you a 3-day package that was 80% sales pitch and all and all that kind of. Tell me a little bit about you. I'm assuming you've been to a bunch of them. What was that like? And how has it helped you today to be a better coach or mentor?
Yeah. Again, nothing wrong with that business. I have no quirks about the people that are in this. In fact, our COO, our integrator for our coaching company, he comes from that world, right? He's spent 18 years selling coaching programs from stage, traveling everywhere and doing all that. But again, nothing wrong with that. Obviously, COVID has brought a very interesting twist to everything, right? Everything's gone virtual, online, and I guess from what angle would you like to know? My thoughts, or
yeah, you're sitting in a big room, right? I've been there. I told you right. I've been sometimes the guy at the back of the room. Most of the time, I was the guy that was on the phone after you bought the package. I was the one that had to deliver what they had sold from the front of the room. But there was many times that they made me wear my cowboy hat, and they said, "Go ask the guy in the back with the big black cowboy hat because he can help you answer that question." But just it's an interesting industry. It's changed a lot because of COVID. I actually haven't been on the road for 2.5 years or something like that. I'm honestly too busy now to do it anyway. They asked me to do a 2-day buy and hold summit. But it's from my computer, and there's nothing harder for me than having to sit for 2 days and trying to entertain people from my computer, where if you're up in front of them. But I'm just curious about what do you do differently, right? You're used to getting people in a room and that type of thing. Is that how you get people into your program, or is it just word of mouth?
So we run strictly off of everything's virtual. Although we do have in-person fulfillment events. So we have retreats for our students once a year, actually twice a year, and then I'll explain some of the other things we do, but yeah, 100% what we do in terms of finding our students is virtual. We used to do a little bit of in-person stuff pre-COVID, but obviously, Earl, the business of this, it's very expensive to run an event, right? Especially if you do stuff on a hotel, right? You got to get the hotel coordinated, people flying in and out, and it's expensive. So we run everything through, online advertisements. We do have an affiliate JV programs that come along our way. And, we have them go through our process of enrollment. They attend a series of free coaching, training webinar, as well as we actually have live workshops we do once a month, just kind of as a demo of what we teach and what we do. And a lot of times those workshops, we actually have our students teach them. Our students will get to a point where they hit their first real estate deal. They have this fresh waves of confidence. And we actually invite our students to become speakers of our own events. And they're sharing their story and how they were able to succeed and get their first real estate deal. But as far as, in-person stuff that we do something called a decade in a day. I borrowed this term from Russell Brunson, which I get the privilege to be part of his inner circle. But Decade in a Day is basically we invite our students once every quarter to our office here, and we take 10, 12 of them at a time, and we just break down their business and help them come up with a plan, a blueprint by the end of the day. We actually also do a property tour. So we actually take them on our vehicles, and then we go to some of the properties we've closed and done and show them around. So actually seeing, helping them see the tangible result of what's possible, obviously does something to their belief of giving them more confidence and certainty. So yeah, we have an element of in-person stuff that we do, but most of the stuff that we provide is virtual through Zoom and weekly Zoom calls and all that. So yeah, that's pretty much how our mentorship is built. Interesting.
I worked for Kiyosaki and Carlton Sheets, the same company that I mentored for, did both of them at the same time. Mm-hmm. The tuition at the time, it was probably a lot for people at the time, but it was pretty nominal by today's standards. I sometimes I don't think I can take my wife out to dinner for what people were paying for it back then. Yeah. But then progressed up to the point where, we had people who were paying $50,000 to attend a bus tour, right? To get to a commercial training that they were sold a mentoring package for another $25,000. I mean, it's big time money. I'm really excited to say that the people, I don't know what the difference was. Maybe I was a better coach, but towards the end, I probably had maybe an 80% success ratio in the commercial where we actually were able to get somebody a deal. When I started, man, I remember going home at night going, I feel so bad for these people because they've spent this money and I just, and I got 20% success rate or something like that. I mean, it's definitely an interesting industry. I don't think it's because they spent more money that they got more, that they were more able to succeed. But tell me what you think. You've worked with mentors yourself. You have you've run a mentoring program. What do you think is the difference in whether people are able to succeed with the program or whether they falter?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so the attributes I see of people who succeed and who don't. The good news, and I tell these to my students all the time. I told them, hey, the bad news is 98% of people in the world are not part of the 2% club, right? They're not going to make it. The good news is you have everything to do with whether you want to, you make it to that 2% or not. Like you are 100%, you have 100% of the responsibility. Sure, there's a little bit of luck play in that. Yes. But you have 100% of control, whether you make it or not. And a lot of times it has to do with, I think it's just a mindset. And this is probably the hardest thing to crack is the mindset of people thinking this is a lottery ticket, right? They come in, go, something's going to happen to me versus me happening, right? So I can tell someone who's going to succeed where they put in the work, they're showing up every coaching call. They go and when we do our accountability calls on Wednesdays, they show up having done their thing and share momentum. So I think the biggest people who win is learning how to create momentum just by taking action. That I think there's a saying, action begets more action, right? So they take action and then creates momentum. And then next week they do a little bit of thing. And we do a lot to try to celebrate their wins, even though it's not, hey, you just closed on a deal. But hey, if you went and called 10 sellers, hey, we want to celebrate you. And that ultimately creates momentum. So if someone is of the mindset that, hey, I have control, I can make the decisions, I could, it's up to me. Those individuals we can help. I know we can teach them tactics, strategies, mold them a little bit, and they're willing to work. The hardest people we ever work with is, why isn't this happening to me? Like, where's my luck? Or they'll start blaming people, like, oh, it's the coach's fault, or it's my mom's fault for giving me bad DNA, or it's like, oh, it's my wife's fault because she wouldn't let me work, right? Whatever, So if they can take extreme ownership, yeah, we can help them. Even if it takes 3 years, like me, right? We can help them. So yeah.
The interesting thing, and I participated in RIA clubs. I participated in coaching. Mm-hmm. We now do podcasts, and we interview a number of people that similar stories to you. I'm assuming that you're a little bit younger than I am. You still have, still have most of your hair, and it's all dark, right? So
you never know, Earl. Asians age differently. I could be 60 years old, and
but the amazing thing to me is seeing the success of younger people who there's one in our local RIA club that 3 or 4 years ago showed up at some stuff I was speaking at, learned a little bit about syndication, has taken off with it today. Probably, I think he's been doing it 3.5, 4 years or something like that. And probably owns, what do you think, Ben? 600-700 units, something like that.
Yeah.
I see younger kids all the time that have come on, started, and they're able to succeed. And we have some people that we've interviewed that started, in 15, 20 years, probably 15 years ago, and have multi-billion-dollar portfolios just from taking just exactly what you said, right? They take responsibility for it. They just say, we're going to do a little bit better tomorrow than we did today. And it's amazing how once you get past that first year or two, and you have a little bit of success, that it can grow exponentially. And to me, it's just a credit to the younger people that have the vision to be able to do that. And honestly, it's maybe it's this great country that we live in that allows people the opportunity to do that. So congratulations to you and for being young and being able to at least crack the beginnings of the code.
Yeah, I appreciate your kind words, Errol, and I think you're right with the country we live in. I talk to people all the time from France, England, and some of the European countries, and it's really interesting where that's kind of almost frowned upon. Where like, oh, you're an entrepreneur, you're weird, right? Like it's almost frowned upon to be different and new and driven in those types of places, which drives me crazy. But yeah, Hopefully we will endure that spirit of entrepreneurship and ingenuity and innovation here in the United States. I can't say the same for other parts of the country, but yeah, that's needs to live on.
Hey, Sam, we're loving this conversation. In respect of your time, we've got some other stuff we want to talk about. So is it okay if we switch topics?
Oh yeah, let's pivot. Yeah.
Okay. So just a quick reminder to our listeners, on today's episode, we're talking about how you can get started in real estate investing, how to break free from your mortgage, and how to use infinite banking to grow your wealth. So Sam, I want to talk about your second book, which is called Break Free from Your Mortgage. And I'm really interested in what you have to say about this because it's a slightly different mindset than I normally bring to the table. So tell us, why should someone focus on paying down or paying off their mortgage?
Yeah. So it's funny, like I've said all the real estate investing, entrepreneurship stuff, and this topic kind of feels like the antithesis of that, right? It's like, it's kind of it feels opposite, but I can hold the two, what appears to be contrary in the same mind. My argument for this is that when it comes to paying off your mortgage faster, and I know immediately some people are like, oh, it sounds like a foolish idea. Why would you ever pay off your mortgage, right? Obviously the argument I hear all the time is, Sam, why not take the money you would, pay off your mortgage and put it in the markets instead? Or why not focus on investing more? Or inflation erode away the interest cost over time in a span of 30 years. I get this all the time. And I have conversations with financial advisors about this. And my answer is pretty simple. I have a different answer for investment properties. With investment property, if you have a performing debt, great, keep it, whatever, right? If you take on $20 million debt, that gives you 20-30% return on cash, great. That's awesome. Let's rock it, right? So I'm not necessarily like Dave Ramsey, where like you have to buy everything on cash. You cannot put a single dollar in a credit card. I don't necessarily believe in that. But the argument I make for if you're a home owner, you have your own primary residence. I'm in the camp of you need to pay off your primary residence as soon as possible. One of the main reason is a couple of things they're shifting, and I think we're kind of, it's almost like thinking arrears. So over the last 30 years, a lot have shifted in these socioeconomic changes and different behaviors. So if you look at a 30-year mortgage, and really any 30-year mortgage, let's say at a 5% fixed rate interest rate, right? You're likely going to pay close to about 90 to 100% in what's called TIP, total interest percentage, right? So if you have $100,000 principal balance mortgage, 5% fixed rate, you're going to pay anywhere close to $90 to $100,000 of interest in the span of 30 years. It's math. It's not that my opinion, right? Majority of that $90,000 to $100,000 of interest you'll pay actually happens in the front end of the mortgage, meaning in the first 5 to 10 years, vast majority of your monthly payment is actually going towards interest. I mean, check, if you don't believe me, check your mortgage amortization schedule. You'll see it. Now the problem with that is there's two things there that I can rebut. The one thing is that according to the U.S. Census Bureau data, this is 2010. I'm still waiting for the new data. The U.S. Census Bureau data says that the average U.S. adult in the United States moves 11.2 times or 11.7 times in their lifetime. So if you extrapolate that, you live to be about 80 years old, you're moving every 6 to 7 years. So assuming, you're 30 years old, you bought a home, fixed rate mortgage, right? It's likely that you're going to move in the next 6 to 7 years based straight on data. And that might be because you live in California, so you decide to go to Texas, or you have a new job and you have to relocate to other parts of the town, or you have 5 kids, so you need to buy a new home to support your kids, or you're on the other end where you're 50 years old, you're empty nesters, and you have to now downsize. People are more mobile than ever before. I mean, the day and age where you settle down for 30, 40 years, work for the company, they take care of you with the pension plan, that's not normal anymore. I mean, that's kind of long gone. So with the 30-year mortgage setup, and the likelihood, and the data backs this, where you're likely to move every 5 to 6 years, what's happening is that each time you move and you relocate, you end up selling your home, closing out the mortgage, and then when you go and buy a new home, you're getting a whole brand new 30-year mortgage, where vast majority, once again, is going back towards interest. So you're in this perpetual cycle where every 5 to 7 years, you're resetting your 30-year mortgage clock, having to pay more interest over and over again in perpetuity, which means you're going to be 80 years old and you still have 20 years left to go on your mortgage. Those are actually our typical clients, is 67-year-old clients that have 25 years left to go. And by the time they're going to be done with the mortgage, I mean, truth be told, their mortgage will probably outlast them. And it's a sad thing to say, but it's true. And a lot of times those that are my clients that are 40 and 50, they don't want to be at 62, 65, still have 20 years left to go in their mortgage. And it's, eroding away their cash flow. So, I would make the argument specifically for that case scenario. For investment property, it's not the case, right? Like when your tenant moves out, it's not like your mortgage had to reset, right? You keep your mortgage, you hold on to it. As long as you hold on to that property, you're riding on the amortization cycle. The other part of the inflation argument is that's an argument for bond purchases and bond investments, where the interest yield is linear, right? You get same amount of interest every year. So yeah, inflation will hurt bond value bond, whereas amortization with mortgage, it's front loaded. So inflation really doesn't help you there the long run, because most of the interest you've already paid up in 5 to 10 years. So yeah, I love like taking these arguments and just like hammering them down. But so all in all, we discovered a strategy that will allow homeowners to escape that perpetual cycle, pay it all off in as early as 5 to 7 years, but they can still use our real estate investing framework for the fourth strategy to then, as they're paying off their mortgage, but they can use other people's money, right? OPM, to buy apartment buildings, real estate, scale and grow. So we teach both ends, right? Defense and the offense. Defense being, hey, let's not have you pay the interest over and over again for the rest of your life. And offense being, let's create some cash flow for you so that you can either get rid of your job or work less, whatever you want to do. That's ultimately our game plan. So yeah, that's the other side of what we do, is helping homeowners, individuals pay off their mortgage faster.
So Sam, I wrote this question down before our episode today. And since you brought up Rich Dad Poor Dad, I'm going to ask it anyways.
Sure.
Do you believe that a house that you live in is an asset or a liability?
Oh, 100% is a liability, right? You can tell you why, because last week I spent like $2,000 on landscaping, and I'm like, why am I doing this? Right? Like, this is dumb. Like to make my dirt better. Like, come on, right? But yeah, it's 100%. And now it could be an asset where there's a couple of things you could do, like home office or renting it out, or do Airbnb, or there's the new. I don't think it's new, but it's a tax provision where you can rent your house to your business and claim it all as expense and write it all off, right? So there's things you can do, like that. But for a general definition, no, I believe it's a liability.
I agree with you, Sam.
Yeah.
And just to kind of summarize what you're talking about with paying off mortgages, you're talking about a great point to our listeners and just the public in general, that those banks are set up they know you're going to move, right? So
right, 100%.
We're talking about good financial principles here. And if you're stuck in that loop, using strategies to pay off your mortgage earlier can make a lot of sense, so that you're not throwing money away to interest. You could also consider, and I think you're talking about this as well, buying investments, either rental property or other type of investments, to help pay down that mortgage and ultimately get it so that you're living passively and you don't have to worry about those expenses. So great points there, Sam. In honor of time, we're going to switch topics again, because Earl wants to ask you about something else. So
all right,
thank you for answering those questions.
Yes.
And I'm going to just we'll skip over infinite banking, because we probably don't have near enough time to do it. And listen to the paying off your house. I actually have paid off everything that I own except for my house. I have a huge line of credit on my house that I use, and so But it's interesting. Years ago, when I was coaching for Kiyosaki, we used to have to coach people through playing the cash flow game. Have you ever played the cash flow game?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We even today, we use that on our retreats. And what we do is we don't play the cash flow like the way it's meant to play. We play cash flow extreme. So we actually assign people to play a banker, to play an attorney, to play a seller, and then we actually have our students negotiate, negotiate and work with an attorney to set up your LLC, your operating agreement, right? Do all the things like in real life you'll do, so that we're simulating, almost like playing Matrix, right? You're living in the Matrix world to learn how to invest in real estate. You come out and then you're like, oh, I can do this in real life. So yeah, we use cash flow all the time as a tool. And sometimes we'll start 7 p.m. and we go to 3 a.m. in the morning. It's nuts, man.
My young kids used to come over, Christmas, New Year's. Hey, Dad, let's play cash flow. We want to play. And I could kick their butt over and over and over again. But the secret I learned early on was that I was always the janitor, right? Because he had no expenses he had no expenses to, you do a couple of deals and all of a sudden you're out of the rat race. And I can literally remember telling some of my first time cash flow students when I was coaching that, sell your house, sell your car, sell everything you have, live on a Volkswagen bus on the beach, right? Because you have no expenses and you'll be out of the rat race in 3 weeks or something like that.
Right.
If you're in a hurry to do it.
One deal, right? Yeah.
Yep. So anyway.
So Sam, we're going to do the final 4. These are 4 questions we ask to everybody that comes on our show. The first question we want to ask you is, what is your favorite business book?
The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. That's a really good read. Yeah.
It's a good book. Thanks for sharing that. The second question we want to ask you is, what brings you happiness?
So Dr. Ben Hardy wrote a book called The Gap in the Game. So just thinking about the gains of the last 10 years of my entrepreneurship journey, brings me a lot of joy.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yep.
You've got a few years before you look like Earl. Tell us what your future retirement looks like.
Oh man. So I don't know if I'm going to have, I'm not going to do the traditional retirement thing. I'll probably do like micro, it's more of a, it's going to be more of a sabbatical, right? I'll probably take like 3 weeks off, just reflect, travel, and then come back with a different vision or different vision, and then start something new. So that's probably more likely than being done at 65, right? Because I'll probably end up dying like a month later without a vision or without any direct. What's the word that Napoleon Hill uses? Definitiveness, right? Life of definitiveness. I probably won't lose that. So yeah,
that's one of the reasons. By the way, you have to learn to enjoy life while you're here, right? It's one thing to put all your money away and save for some future event, but I think you have to spend a little bit of it every once in a while on something frivolous that you enjoy.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah.
The last question for you is, what do you think is the best way to give back?
Yeah, I think the best way to give back, I know the cliche answer is like, oh, you got to donate your money and all that. Actually, I'm now of the camp that sometimes that can hurt people, right? Giving money away could actually hurt people. I actually got the privilege to meet some leaders from some of these African countries, and they're like, hey, stop sending us money. Now actually teach us stuff, right? So I think the best way to actually help people is to equip them to be leaders, right? Like teach them skills, teach them wisdom, teach them application, basically teach them how to fish, right? I think it ultimately comes back down to that. So yeah, I think great leaders create leaders, right? So, if I can do that, if I can live by that mission, yeah, I think that's how I would define how to give back for sure.
And you guys are doing good things with that, with your First Deal Mentor program. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Sam, where can our listeners find you online?
Yeah. So we're big on, I check Facebook every day, messages, right? So you can send me a message, LinkedIn as well. So, obviously Sam Kwak, my name. And then, we're also on YouTube, which, I like to say, with YouTube, you're either going to like what we do there or you're going to hate what we do there. So watch it and you'll go, okay, got it. And you'll understand what we're trying to say there. So yeah.
That means you got a good niche.
Oh yeah. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Hey, Sam, thanks you so much for taking a few minutes. We really, really appreciate your time. It's been really enjoyable spending a little bit of time with you. We are, at least I am very, very impressed that you've been able to find the code, so to speak, that well on your way to financial freedom, and it just shows that you don't have to be born in this country. You can. You don't have to be born wealthy. You don't have to. I know it's not looked at as very favorable today, but you can pull yourself up by your own darn bootstraps. And you're living proof of that too. So on today's episode, we talked a little bit about your real estate investing. We talked a little bit about your coaching program. We really appreciate your sharing for that. And then a little bit about how to break free from your mortgage. And so thank you again for sharing some time with us. We really
hope you got value from this episode. And if you have a minute, then take the time to leave an honest written review for the podcast, because we take those reviews seriously, and it'll help us serve you better on the next episodes. And most importantly, be sure to start taking action so you can control your financial future today.